Good morning. It's the day after Thanksgiving, and here I am with my friend, the COVID virus, which I have selected as my target for the day. That's right. I am now ready to test fire my musket for the very first time. Very exciting. I'm James McQuivy, and this has been part of an ongoing series that I've been recording now for several months. And actually only this weekend, once I've done this part of it, have I decided that I'm ready to share them all. So if you're just coming to this video, enjoy. You're going to see me fire the musket for the first time. A Pedersoli Replica 1761 musket called the Bruen Bess, after what's called the long land pattern. I have to say all of those words to make sure I don't forget. You may not be aware of what they all mean, and that's fine. But these are the muskets that would have been carried by British soldiers, or regulars as they were called, during the Revolutionary War. Here I am in the suburbs of Boston, in a nice hill area, where I am now a member of a gun club, precisely so that I can come here and test my musket and learn how to fire it for the first time. So given that I am outside of Boston, part of my goal here is to experience what it would have been like to be someone who had the responsibility to bear arms. Now, I've written a separate essay about that, which I have posted, and you're welcome to see the links below and see if you want to read that essay, called The Responsibility to Bear Arms. It's a reflection on the role that gun ownership and gun use, proper gun ownership and proper gun use, have played in our country. Now, I'm not a pro-gun guy. I'm not an anti-gun guy. I'm someone who is looking at this with fairly fresh eyes and fingers, meaning I'm about to pull a trigger and fire a musket for the first time in my life, the first time I fired a gun that I've owned since I was maybe 12. So more of those reflections coming, but hey, let's figure out what we're going to do today before the rain gets too thick that I have to stop, because I can't keep my powder dry while it rains. Yes, that is what that phrase refers to, musket powder. All right, here we go. Here's the view of the Bruen Bess, the long land pattern. In previous videos, I explained where the name may have come from. Nobody actually knows. There's my ear protection and eye protection, because I intend to be safe, and I'm required to do so by the club. This is the Flintlock mechanism. You're looking at the flint. That is literally the flint. This frizzen, it's called, which creates the friction that of steel against the flint. When we all have it in place, you'll see I will do a couple of things. First, I will show you the sparks that the flint makes on the steel. Then I will fill the pan, this part here, with 10 grains of powder and ignite that so that I understand what that's like. And then I will actually load the musket through the barrel, the smooth bore barrel, packed with just powder, a powder cartridge with no ball, and I will fire that. That's the kind of shot that you are likely to see when you're at a parade where they're commemorating Minutemen or something like that here in Massachusetts. Then we'll fire it for real. All right, here we go. First thing we're going to do is cock the firing mechanism. 1, 2. You see that the trigger is now engaged. We've got to put the frizzen in place. This is, if there were powder in the pan, this would be considered a loaded weapon. Just having powder in the pan and having it cocked. Of course, there's no ball inside, so it couldn't do really any damage, but still, that's the definition. You pull up the frizzen, there's no way you can cause an explosion in the pan. So pull the frizzen down over the cap. And by the way, you're looking here, when you pull the frizzen down, it seals tightly the cap. I've never understood this in all the things I've read about Revolutionary War weapons, is that is how you can move the weapon around. You can have it loaded. So for example, when the British first arrived at Lexington Common, I did a whole video about that, Lexington Green technically, did a whole video about that, telling the history of that event on what we now call Patriots Day, April of 1775. In that incredibly pivotal event, the British, the front line of skirmishers, came with their weapons loaded. So they had a powder charge and a ball and a wad inside the barrel, and they had their frizzens collapsed over the pan so that they could be ready to fire. And that means loaded at that point. So, you know, the idea that you could accidentally fire off one of these and start a Revolutionary War, which is exactly what happened, is completely realistic if you're coming in loaded like that. So anyway, I'm going to first fire at my target. So obeying the rules of fire safety, it is technically loaded. That's why I'm keeping the gun pointed in a safe direction at all time. Finger trigger discipline, I'm keeping my finger to the side of the trigger. In this case, of course, as I said, there's no ball or powder, so it's not going to do anything terrible even if I were to discharge it, but you want to be safe all the time with any weapon. This is something that gun enthusiasts, friends of mine, will absolutely insist on, that in the dialogue about gun use and gun safety, that we are talking honestly about the fact that good gun owners practice very safe gun practices, and I'm trying to learn how to do that. Okay, ready? I have a gun pointed in a safe direction, and so I can put my finger on the trigger. I can aim. I'm not going to actually be able to aim at anything. See the spark? Now, if I'm going to put powder in that pan, I'll be right back, and you'll see what that's going to look like. You're looking at 10 grams of double F of powder. F is a rating of how fine the powder is. That is not very much. That is how much is going to go into the pan. Now I have to pull the cocking mechanism there out of the way. Frizzen stays open so I can access the pen, and I'll just show you what this is like. Now there are more sophisticated ways to do this, but you can see here, I hope, yeah, it's in focus and everything. It barely fills the pan. So that way when I close the frizzen, it's nice and tight in there. Can't slip away, can't disappear. All right. We're going to see what happens when we fire that, but I am first going to put on my eye protection. Eye protection is critical, of course, because when I pull the trigger, drop the flint onto the frizzen, causing that spark that we just saw, it's going to ignite that powder. It's going to be a few inches from my face. Now it's going to be safe 99.999% of the time, but just in case, I got to keep eye protection because that's the thing most likely to be damaged by a wayward piece of burning powder. Okay, we're going to try this now. First time ever. I'm kind of excited about it. Ready? Whoa! Got a little black powder that hit me up here on the forehead. Not a big deal. Pan is now, let me pull back the flint. Pan is now dirty. This is one thing everyone who does this for real tells me. Get ready to do a lot of cleaning up because black powder is dirty. So I will get, the rain starting to pick up. Let me see if we can get a couple of shots in here before it gets too heavy. But I'm going to go and prepare a cartridge without a ball so that I can shoot a blank. All right, rain's picking up a little bit. We'll see how long I can continue to do this. So first of all, I have prepared a cartridge. See if I can keep track of all these things. I have prepared a cartridge that has no ball in it. Now, normally you'd bite off the end, pour the powder down the barrel, and at that point chase it with the ball encased in the cartridge so the cartridge acts as the wadding. Now you can use patches of material as wadding, but in this cartridge approach that the British regulars used and the most disciplined of the colonists used during the Revolutionary War, this was sufficient. And it also is nice because it combusts completely at the explosion. It is 100 grams of powder in here. Now, I showed you before 10 grams of powder to get the pan filled, and then this amount of powder. So what I'm going to do, I'm not going to bite it off. I don't need to bite it off. Tear it off maybe. And I will pour this down. I can't just drop the cartridge in the barrel because the cartridge, I'm having a hard time doing this, the cartridge with the powder inside of it is not as flammable. The powder needs to be outside, and then the cartridge goes after it, empty cartridge at that point, as a way to pack it down and keep it so that the gunpowder, the black powder, is as close to the little hole at the base of the pan as possible. Okay, now this is my wadding. I'll, as I said, normally there'd be a ball in here. I'm doing this for the first time, folks. You are seeing it happen live. And then I get the rod, if I can do that. Invert it so you've got the flat end going into, and pack it down. And you want to pack it down so that the explosion, when it happens, causes enough buildup of pressure. You don't want air between the powder and the projectile if you're shooting a ball, which we're not in this case. Now notice I'm doing all this directly into the barrel, the muzzle, and you might think, well, isn't that dangerous? Remember, this weapon is not loaded, even if there's powder and ball inside it. It's not loaded until we have cocked it, put our 10 grains, into the pan, and even then, it's not loaded. We now have to close the frizzen. Now it's loaded. Now notice I've been keeping it pointed towards my target in a safe area at all times, but this is going to be the first time I've ever fired it. Okay, ear protection on, eye protection on, weapon is loaded. There's a really small hole here that I'll show you later that's going to allow, in theory, the spark to travel into the barrel, the muzzle, where we have the powder charge and the wadding holding it in place. Let's see how this goes. If I collect the trigger and the pan flashes but there's no explosion, it means it didn't transfer into the inside of the muzzle. That is called a flash in the pan. I know, like a lot of 80s bands. All right, here we go. Let's see what happens. What do you know? It worked. All right, next shot. Woo, there's a lot of smelly black powder in the air. Next shot with an actual ball at an actual target. Now, rather dangerously, I feel like I'm a pro because the first time I tried it, it worked. I am told to not always be so cocky, but we'll see what happens. Speaking of cocking, I don't know if you can see it there, but there's a little hole where smoke is coming out. And that's the hole that transfers the spark from inside the pan. That smoke is now gone, but hopefully you saw that. Oh, there it is. It's still coming out. You see that little hole? It's crucial. Yeah. So because I've just fired it, it's got the smoke coming out. It has, there's going to be residue on the inside that's actually going to make it harder for me to stuff the next ball in. And after 5 or 6 shots, I'm told that it could be so thick that I wouldn't even be able to get it stuffed all the way in there, because these things have to be cleaned out regularly. But also, if they're still hot from the last shot, the metal is expanded a little bit, just a little bit, but enough that I'm letting it cool down between shots. All right, we have an unloaded weapon. I'm going to go through the process here. Cartridge tied off with string, with thread. Vite, which I'm doing for fun because I don't really need to do that. Now here's the trick. In this case, I have 110 grams of powder in here, and I need 10 of it for the pan. And when I was first trying to imagine this, it's like, how in the world do you measure that? And now that I've filled the pan a couple of times, I can kind of tell that the pan is really designed to only hold 10 grains of powder. Now, grain, it must be some term of art because it doesn't refer to specific individual grains. It's a measurement amount, like grams or ounces or whatever. But anyway, so if you were to actually sit down and count the number of grains in there, it's probably like 100. But it's a very small amount, and the pan only holds that much. So that's good. That's reassuring to me. So now I still have powder in here, and the ball. So remember, we're going to pour the powder in. I really can't tell what's going on there with the powder. I think I got it all. Yep. Then now we're going to chase it with the ball. And I wish I knew for sure which end to put where. I'm going to go with the tapered end. And we're going to stuff this 75 caliber ball into the barrel. And let's see. There we go. Oh, maybe I won't show that one. That was harder to do than I thought. There's a couple of reasons for that. I probably didn't have the ball packed tightly in the powder enough, so in the paper of the cartridge. So there's a very high probability that I was trying to get too much paper wrapped around the ball at the same time. I now have a loaded weapon. My flint, my frizz closed over my loaded pan, powder, and a ball. I'm going to fire this. I'm going to see how my aim is, and I'm going to show you how unlikely it is to be good. But let's try it together. Ready? You want to go look? Let's see. Okay, I'm approaching the target, and I'm nervous because from a distance I feel like I missed it totally, like I totally missed the whole backer and everything. But alas, I didn't. I missed our virus. I'm sorry. COVID has not gone away because I missed it. But I have another couple of shots. So I only brought 7 with me. And I have the kit to make more, but given the rain coming down, I might just shoot 5 of these. I'm told I'm going to need to go clean my barrel anyway, and I did bring some stuff to do that, but pretty excited. So now I got to figure out my aim. My aim was poor. I mean, not too bad centered. I aimed right for the middle of the virus's face here. So, you know, not terrible, but I apologize that COVID isn't over now because I missed the chance to make it over. Okay, learning some things already. Remember how I showed you it takes 2 cocks to get this in position to enable the trigger? Well, duh. I should only pull it 1/2, make it half cocked. You've heard that phrase too. Interesting how many cool old phrases we use are related to this. But a half-cocked weapon, and it's not just muskets, it's true up for revolvers and later weapons as well. A half-cocked weapon means that you're not able to fire. You cannot pull the trigger when it's half-cocked. That's the position in which I should be loading the pan and stuffing the ball. So, sorry. Okay, I know I said I don't need to do that, but it's so much easier when your other hand is holding the rifle, the musket. Ready? I'm sure as I do this a bunch of times, I will be more confident, but right now I'm so nervous about too much powder, too little powder. Okay, we've got it in there. I didn't even let you see it. Sorry about that. So now I can close the frizzen. And it's closed, but it's only half cocked. So when I put it down so that I can pound the ball into it, I don't have to worry about it accidentally going off. That's the thing that... Okay, so pouring the powder down. Powder's out, I can feel it. Stuffing the ball a little more intelligently than I did last time. I could even get it in there with my finger. All right, I'm already a pro, or not, but you know what I'm saying. I'm getting the hang of some parts of this. Ball goes down way easier this time. Now I can actually stuff it, which you're supposed to do, because you can't have air between your powder and your ball. Dang, this actually works. Amazing the precision in these instruments. We like to think, you know, before assembly lines or whatever, that, you know, old-timey technology was really weak. This is amazing. Like the precision necessary to get the pan just right and the hole next to it just right so that it actually pulls the spark in and ignites the powder. I have read and I've seen some videos where people think that you're supposed to stuff that hole with powder to ensure the transfer of the powder spark into the muzzle. I have it on good authority, and I've just done it, that you don't have to do that. And sometimes people will say to me, oh, you're going to fire a musket. You pull the trigger, and then you have to wait 4 or 5 seconds for it to go off. You just saw I did not have to wait. I pulled, and it basically went off. And I'm told that that's because the people who stuff the little hole with powder, thinking they need powder grain lined up throughout that hole in order to ensure transfer of the spark into the muzzle, they're wrong. That the precision of the instrument is such that it already has the distances worked out. And as long as you're using the pan properly and the spark properly, and you have a sharpened and appropriately positioned flint, it'll work. So for me, it's worked 100% of the time, the one time I've tried it. Let's see if I can go for 2 out of 2 and still be at 100%. Now, I need to finish loading. Cock, now we're ready to go. Now we have a trigger that's enabled. Now, this is a loaded weapon Obviously, I've been maintaining good discipline all along the way anyway, but here we go. See if I can get that virus and take care of that virus once and for all.